are the most common like integration challenges you
Yeah,
consistently observed,
yeah.
when company goes through these transitions?
There's a lot of answers to this, but really, in the end, the answer to this question is you don't know what you don't know.
We're talking about the industrial distributors, right? They often
Yeah,
face a lot of specific integration complexities. So,
yeah.
what are your advice for them in such a demanding environment right now?
I do not, they have one of the biggest challenges. Okay.
No.
And here's why. So it depends on how you define industrial distributors. But when I run into industrial distributors, these are people that are delivering pieces, components, or materials to
Mhm.
manufacturers.
What are some of the things we should look for to kind of future proof our self, right? So we can be the next industry leaders. Like what did you do in your lifetime, and what is your advice to people like us or the new supply chain leaders coming behind me to do in this business?
It kind of goes to the very first thing I brought up. You cannot be afraid to look at what's going on with technology.
Mm-hmm.
A
Yeah,
long
that's
answer for a short question. I'm sorry.
no, that is perfect. I'm loving this. Like, this is so much information. And, over the years, you might have had so many stories, right, of how you've dealt with different customers and companies. I would love to hear a real world example,
Yeah.
right? So let's get into the actual part now.
Yeah.
Today, we are incredibly excited to welcome a true visionary in the world of supply chain. Our guest is Mark Monaghan, a distinguished supply chain technology expert and an accomplished enterprise sales leader. He's known for solving complex SCM challenges. He's built a strong personal brand by turning strategy into impact through real world execution. Welcome, everyone, to Vserve e-business solutions podcast on supply chain management. I'm Cynthia, and today we have a very truly insightful guest joining us. He's a veteran in the world of EDI and supply chain integration, and with a career spanning decades and an incredible depth of knowledge across various industries, he's seen it all. So please welcome Mark Monaghan. It's a
Wow.
pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Cynthia. I appreciate the time and to share some of our both of our knowledge.
Same here. Well, without wasting any time, Mark, then I would love to hear about your career. Let's start there. It's been a fascinating journey for you. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, it has been a little bit unique. I basically I originally studied economics and computer science a long,
Mhm.
long time ago. And out of college, I got into a technology startup firm. I was one of the founding employees, and I was a programmer,
Yep.
working on technologies as old as the IBM PC running on IBM DOS, which was not
Yep.
Microsoft yet.
Uh-huh.
That's how far back it goes. But from there, I got after about 6 years there, um, I bumped into this EDI firm in the food business that I jumped on board with, and that was where my supply chain experience began. We were developing connections for food distributors and manufacturers, and we were selling software for them to do that.
Hmm.
From there, I then went into the industry. So I was in tech, but I was working for actual supply chain companies, and I went to work as director of IT for Sugar Foods Corporation, which is Sweet and Low. And then I continued my work either directly or as a consultant with companies like Johnson Products, Walgreens, and different EDI consultative roles in my career to kind of that really kept me in the business of keeping the blood flow, so to speak, of supply chains going with the EDI exchange of order to cash, procure to pay. I call it this next phase of my life was I actually managed the EDI migration for Joseph E. Seagram and Sons during Y2K. And I jokingly say this is my last real job
Yeah.
because I was actually in IT in the industry, and after that, I kind of jumped into the vendor side of things. But
Hmm.
that project was a ginormous project. It was a massive ERP migration of over 50 disparate systems around the world. Seagram was a $9 billion alcohol beverage company. They also owned Universal.
Yep.
and I had to bring like 30, 40 EDI systems into one EDI system. So I developed the RFP, I launched the RFP, I managed the selection process for the vendor. We selected the
Wow.
vendor, I deployed it, the team and I deployed it, and we operated it. And our piece of that pie was done early. We were actually done 3 weeks before Y2K conversion. The actual date, we was actually in
Yeah.
'99 when it was done,
Yeah.
and we were under budget. So it was a pretty successful
Wow.
project. And then the corresponding ERP system was also on time and under budget, which is actually the important piece. EDI is a
Hmm.
subsystem. The ERP systems are the systems that really matter. So you not always, and I'll talk to this later, you need to have the EDI systems um, need to be subordinate to the ERP systems as it relates. So you don't want to negatively impact those.
Mm.
Um,
Okay.
then I jump into the vendor side where I went to work for an industry standards organization, which manages the barcodes, scannings, and the EDI standards for the food, beverage, retail business. Um, and then I went from there into working for the largest EDI companies in the world. First, it was GXS, then it was
Hmm.
OpenText, and then it was
Hmm.
SPS Commerce.
Yep.
Then I did a little bit of a jaunt in retail analytics, but then I
Hmm.
jumped right back into EDI with True Commerce.
Yeah.
And then about a year ago, I left True Commerce and I do consulting in this space. I primarily my consulting in this space is kind of focused on companies who need to make a good EDI decision. So they've already decided they're doing EDI. They just want
Hmm.
to understand what's out there and
Hmm.
what a good selection process is, and I help them with that. The other thing I'm working on is a very interesting project on the bleeding edge where we're looking at AI and we're looking at ways to use AI agents to more rapidly deploy large EDI programs. And this could really affect timelines to deployment, taking huge implementations from 12 to 18 months down to as short as 3 to 6 months, which from a deployment standpoint really is impactful. So that's probably
Wow.
too much information. I
Wow.
apologize, but
No, that is such a fascinating career, Mark. And I know we spoke about this earlier as well. And every time you talk about it, it just kind of blows my mind of the depth of knowledge that you have over the years. So, and I mean, you've worked in such diverse range of industries as well. So my next question would be then in your experience, what are the most common like integration challenges you
yeah,
consistently observed,
yeah.
when company goes through these transitions?
Yeah, I've thought about this prompt because it's very important and it's really good that it's the first question. And there's a lot of answers to this, but really in the end, the answer to this question is you don't know what you don't know. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, most companies that are looking at what to do today, they're looking at it for a reason, right? Either they're
Yeah.
growing fast or they're
Hmm.
losing business or they just know inherently they've got a new technology officer and they just know inherently they're behind the times. But
Hmm.
you don't know,
Yeah.
right? You don't
Yeah.
know. Are you driving a 1968 Volkswagen and everyone else is in a Ferrari? You don't know.
Yeah.
So you need to get an outside view. Now, maybe that outside view is a new CIO or a new executive that has a lot of change management experience, but you
Hmm.
really need an outside assessment to come in and look at what's going on and see where you are. And it's
Hmm.
very important, I think, now that people do that because you need to be up to date today to
Yeah.
prepare for the next 5 years of the other changes that are piling onto all of us. This AI
Yes.
stuff is going to
Yeah.
change stuff. You need to be even today, not
Yeah.
10-year back in tech. So that's
Yeah.
really the primary thing. Some of the other things that have always been around for challenges are um, slow to accept new ways of doing things. So, a
Yeah.
lot of times consultants and people in change management will hear, well, this is the way we always do it. We've always done it. Or, well,
Hmm.
we do things differently, so we're
Yeah.
special and we need to keep doing things differently. And a lot
Yeah.
of times those things are because some old system that someone custom wrote couldn't do something. So they've
Hmm.
created manual processes
Yep.
to plug the holes. So it
Yep.
really it really requires you to say it's a blank sheet of paper. Let's see what's out there, and then
Yeah.
bring in the new stuff that makes the most sense. So
Yep.
those are some of the other things. And I mentioned this earlier, and I'll say this because it's always important. When it comes to EDI integration or integration, broader
Hmm.
integration,
Hmm.
you have to align to the ERP system.
Yep.
Because if you're doing a new ERP system and your EDI deployment is late, that ERP deployment will be late because in most cases the EDI system's bringing in the orders. So if you're doing thousands of orders a month or even hundreds of orders a month or more, they're not going live with a new ERP if EDI is not online. So that
Yeah.
EDI project needs to be up and running and fine tuned by the time they flip the switch for the ERP. So there's just a couple of things, but fresh
Yeah.
perspective, an open
Hmm.
mind, fresh eyes, and
Yeah.
don't be late.
Don't be late. Yep, yep. That's perfect. Don't be late and have a fresh sheet of paper, right? Always. So,
Yeah,
and how? So, when you're advising like your company or your clients on selecting these, EDI platform, how do you know which one would be the best fit
yeah,
for each business model or the volume? How do you make those right
yeah.
recommendations?
So after you assess where you are today, where you want to
Mm-hmm.
be in a year, 3 and 5, you're gonna
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna set a strategy. And typically that strategy is going to involve either a new ERP or significant change management to your current ERP. So
Yep.
those will be the framework that you're working under. Now, assuming you're going through change management, because you wouldn't be looking at a new EDI system if you weren't going through change management,
Mm-hmm.
then what you're going to do is you need to align with that strategic partner that you're working with to get that done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so two things to keep in line. One, what is the ERP system that the EDI system is going to integrate with? That's going to drive the decision or drive
Mm-hmm.
a big portion of the decision. What is your partner recommending and what are they familiar with? And
Mm-hmm.
then the third thing is I would say, how are you, what is the industry that you're in and what is your um, uh, normalcy as it relates to ERPs and processes? And what I
Mm-hmm.
mean by that is let's say you're a traditional manufacturer sourcing to 10 retailers a
Mm-hmm.
product which is called CPG product, which is a something that is a square or rectangle. It goes into a pack, and 4 packs go into a case, and it ships in a standard way.
Yeah.
That EDI and that ERP process to sell and operate that thing and get it to the shelves of your customers is going to be pretty inside the lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to open up a whole bunch of really easier options to get EDI from a managed services because you're not heavily customized. It's not
Yeah.
a unique service oriented industry. It's really inside the lines
Yeah.
versus you're in a very niche business. There's the way the product ships is not always the same. You have
Mhm.
smaller customers, and then it becomes then a more do I need more customization? Do I need the ability to maybe go in and do things more on my own? And maybe
Mhm.
a managed service isn't the best way to go. Maybe I need a hands-on. I need to touch it on prem and then maybe some of it could be managed services. So those are the kind of things. So what's your ERP direction? Who's your
Mhm.
partner in getting your change management done? And then your position in that EDI complexity area.
That's some like excellent insights. So I guess now we can kind of shift our focus on, efficiency, right? So
Yeah,
there's a lot of and we've talked about this. There's often overlooked areas in the back office supply chain operations, right? So what do you think are some of the ideal candidates where these services can be, outsourced for, or for
yeah,
offshore services like that?
yeah. So I can, I'm going to answer this question. For EDI, it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the answer to EDI applies to everything else too. But for
Mm-hmm.
EDI, I'll tell you what's the story with EDI. EDI is not a difficult, but it's a complicated process, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't bode well for someone being the part-time EDI person. Okay,
Yep.
It's
Mm-hmm.
just complicated enough. If you say, oh, I'm going to have Mark be the halftime EDI guy, and then he's going to go back to doing Java and other cool stuff that I need done to keep my systems and stuff running.
Yep.
It's very inefficient because that half time you've allotted for him to do that, or him or her, it's going to be half of that time is going to be
Mm-hmm.
relearning
Yeah.
EDI. EDI is, I call it an oblong tech. So if you've
Yeah.
got a need, if your EDI requirements from an ongoing management perspective are less than an FTE, you got to go managed service or full outsourcing, because
Yeah.
when you need someone to go in and do something, they need to know what they're doing. They can't spend a day and a half
Yeah.
relearning the system because they haven't touched it in 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, that's the answer. I think that applies to everything, but for EDI, absolutely for sure. I also
Mm-hmm.
think that if you're, generically, if you have tremendous peaks and valleys of business, either in your specific business, like your business model is, oh, you're selling, uh, gloves that are cold, right? Well, it's probably
Mm-hmm.
not very busy in July, okay?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because business is
Exactly.
down. Maybe you sell a few companion products that aren't winter related, but
Yeah.
so business and busyness goes down, and then in winter you're around fall when everyone's ordering the gloves for January, February, you're like you're crazy busy. so
Yeah.
so you've got these peaks and valleys. That's a great opportunity for outsourcing particular services. And then I would also say uncertain economic times, when the economy is robust and going, and you're going at 120% and everybody's moving, that's great. But all of a sudden, boom, something happens, and airplane crashes, or a tariff happens, or the market gets glitchy, and for 3 months
Yeah.
everybody's like, oh, we're gonna make do with what we got. then
Yeah.
then the business goes down. So those fluctuations,
Yep.
what you need to do is those need to be covered with offshore or outsourcing. And then the things that never go away, that should be your full-time employees. So I think that answer
Mm-hmm.
for EDI and IT and other businesses is the same, but more
Mm-hmm.
so with EDI, because if you ever are thinking, oh, I'll have a part-time EDI guy, it will fail.
Yeah.
All right. So get your head around that right away, and
Yeah.
get to a third party to make that happen.
Definitely. That's being practical there, right? So making sure you understand the market. That's the
Yeah.
most important part. So um I also we were talking about the industrial distributors, right? They often
Yeah.
face a lot of specific integration complexities. So
Yeah.
what are your advice for them in such a demanding environment right now?
I do not. They have one of the biggest challenges. Okay.
No.
And here's why. So it depends on how you define industrial distributors. But when I run into industrial distributors, these are people that are delivering pieces, components, or materials to
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers who then ship to customers, the end
Yep.
customer.
Yep.
The problem is two problems. One, they have customers, which means they're getting inbound orders and they're shipping out. And that requires EDI, and typically you'll have to comply to your customers' requirements for
Mm-hmm.
EDI. So that's kind of easier, right? Inbound
Yep.
order, outbound acceptance, the ASN, the invoice, all that stuff. It's standard order to cash processing. Your system probably can handle this. You can get a million EDI systems to handle that. But
Mm-hmm.
those inbound orders then are being managed by some kind of fulfillment process internally. And then at some
Mm-hmm.
point, you want to keep your raw materials and things that you are need to run your business to the manufacturers upstream. So now these manufacturers have a tendency to be sometimes a little bigger, sometimes a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
complex. Sometimes they have huge, robust EDI systems like Granger, or some, raw materials provider that they do EDI every single day. It's no big deal. But they also may
Mm-hmm.
have custom suppliers that are a little smaller, a little tweakier, and maybe don't do EDI or don't do all the EDI you need.
Yeah.
So what happens is you kind of have to be custom on all sides. You have to
Mm-hmm.
be flexible on both sides to make this happen. It's harder. And it's if there's a case for on-premise or hands-on EDI, that's
Mm-hmm.
probably one of the better cases for it as industrial commercial. But again, make sure that you have enough work to
Hmm.
keep at least a full-time employee busy. Otherwise, you could do on-prem and just have some consistent consulting available.
Okay,
Because
that's
you can
perfect.
achieve the same thing with a
Hmm.
consultant. You can achieve the same thing because that person knows what they're doing. They're going from one EDI project to another, so they don't have to relearn EDI, relearn the application they're using.
Hmm.
A
Yeah,
long
that's
answer for a short question. I'm sorry.
no, that is perfect. I'm loving this. Like, this is so much information. And over the years, you might have had so many stories, right? Of how you've dealt with different customers and companies. I would love to hear a real world example,
Yeah.
right? So let's get into the actual part now.
Yeah, so I have to be I'm gonna name a company, and I think it's okay to do that. I don't think they'd mind. I'm not gonna say anything good or bad or inaccurate about it.
Uh-huh.
So the one I want to use is Godiva because it's my favorite customer because I actually sold them an EDI system three
Hmm.
separate times.
Oh,
So they're kind of like my lifelong customer.
that's perfect.
But it's going to provide two really good use cases for when EDI is needed. So
Hmm.
I was working for GXS at the time, which eventually was bought by OpenText. I was a
Hmm.
strategic account executive, and I had some of the bigger accounts in the Northeast. And Campbell Soup
Hmm.
was one of them. They were in Camden, New Jersey. I was in Philadelphia.
Yes.
And Campbell's owned Godiva. I think they had bought
Hmm.
them 5 or so years before, and
Hmm.
it didn't fit with whatever reason they decided to divest them. So what
Hmm.
happened is in typical divestitures, what happens is when they break apart, the divested company gets to use the IT systems
Hmm.
in a shared environment, and they're paying a fee to do that.
Hmm.
Like we're going to pay 5% of IT costs to keep your systems in our system until
Hmm.
you migrate off. Okay.
Hmm.
And it's not an uncommon thing with a divestiture, but what this required for them to do is to get the ERP off, get the EDI off, get the XYZ off, get all these things off. And they were on a little bit of a timeline because they had a deadline when there was no fees, and then 9 months down the road, all of a sudden the monthly fees were going to kick in if they weren't off the system. So they had some time pressure. And what
Hmm.
I did is I went in there. We were already Campbell's was already, I believe they were already using our software, but Godiva didn't
Hmm.
want to own software, right? They wanted, we can't worry about EDI, just take it off our hands.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they made a very intelligent decision to go full managed services, and so we pitched them our particular services, and they selected GXS to be the provider for that, and it was a win-win for everybody. I think it was a very intelligent, strategic decision on their part, and I think we GXS did a great job for that. Now, years later, I actually GXS got bought by OpenText, and they came back to me, and I believe that we migrated them into a new ERP system. So they didn't change services. They just went from the legacy one that they migrated into the first time and then into a new one. And
Hmm.
then this is the exciting one. A couple of years ago, they moved into Microsoft Dynamics as their latest ERP, and I was working for True Commerce. So
Uh-huh.
I called up my friend Sue over there, who I'd worked with two other times,
Yeah.
and it was we worked through the RFP. They put us through the ringer,
Yeah.
and it was competitive, and they selected us. And there was a so that one was particularly the reason they made that decision was they liked the API features, and what
Hmm.
APIs provide
Hmm.
to the customers is that they don't have to write code to get the data into and out of the ERP systems. Those are pre-built integration, and what that means is that integrating those pre-built processes become a configuration instead of a coding. Because anytime
Okay.
you write code to do an integration, you got to
Hmm.
change that code every time something changes.
Yeah.
You have to at
Yeah.
least check it. So that was a great example of the kind of a career journey of both
Yeah.
me and Godiva's EDI experience over time.
It's fascinating, right? When your customers kind of trust you enough that they follow you through the years, and
Yeah,
that was a perfect example.
I love that
And
example.
Yeah, that was perfect. That was perfect for this. So, I guess like to kind of close this meeting, um, I always want to like I'm very curious, for supply chain leaders like you, and for the new people like us, when we're coming into this, huge professional life, right? What are some of the things we should look for to kind of future proof our self, right? So we can be the next industry leaders. Like what did you do in your lifetime and what is your advice to people like us or the new supply chain leaders coming behind me to do in this business?
It kind of goes to the very first thing I brought up. You cannot be afraid to look at what's going on with technology. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Even
Mm-hmm.
if you assess, say, oh my gosh, what's this AI stuff? It's so scary. Oh, I don't, you can't put your head in the sand.
Yeah.
Go out and look at it.
Yeah.
Do an assessment, review it, check it out, because even if you decide not to do anything,
Mm-hmm.
you're aware and it's going to make you think about stuff. It's going to make, at a minimum, it's going to say, we should do something different in
Yeah.
this, even though we're not going to do this this big change management project now. We could
Yeah.
do a couple little things, on our own or with a tiny bit of consulting until I can communicate to the board that I need a couple $1 million to really do the right thing to keep up with the Joneses. I mentioned that phrase, keep up with the Joneses. Take a look and ask questions of your customers and your vendors and your sourcing suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them questions. How are you doing things? Oh gosh, are you doing EDI? Who do you use? Are you happy with them?
Yeah.
Or, do you have a transportation system? How's that working? Or who's your 3PL? And are you
Mm-hmm.
doing EDI with them? And I think this is more than just EDI. This is
Yeah.
you need to be inquisitive, because if you're not moving forward with your technology, you are
Yeah.
going backwards, because
Mm-hmm.
your competitors, customers, and your vendors are moving forward. And if you're
Mm-hmm.
not moving forward, you're going backwards. So
Yeah.
those are a couple of things I would suggest.
Yeah. Don't be an ostrich.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Perfect. Well, Mark, that was really an incredible interview and so informative. I hope it was the same for you. And,
I love
your
this stuff.
insights, perfect, perfect. Your insights were everything that we were looking for, to understand the evolving role of EDI and EPI and everything that you're doing, right? So, thank you so much for your time. We truly appreciate you sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you.
And
This is great.
perfect, perfect. Well, thank you so much for your time and we'll stay connected. Thank
I
you so
hope
much
so.
again.